fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2 on our order paper, the confirmation of minutes. Call on Vice President John White.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, 3rd June, Wednesday, 4th June, and Thursday, 5th June, 2025 be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that? Yes.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of Tuesday, 3rd June, Wednesday, 4th June, and Thursday, 5th June, 2025 be confirmed.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Vice President John White. Item number 3, messages. Mr. Sumner?
No messages, Madam President.
Thank you. I will say that we did have apologies from Minister Caesar, who is traveling, and the business on the order paper that would have been in her name will be taken up by Minister Wilkinson. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. The first announcement, I wish to announce that in accordance with the provisions of Section 24.1 and 24.3 of the Ombudsman Act 2004, a copy of the Ombudsman for Bermuda's annual report, which covers the period the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2024, has been forwarded to me as the President of the Senate, and that copies of the said report are hereby tabled in the Senate for the information of senators. Senators, you can access a copy of the report on your tablets and or on the Parliament website. Another announcement then is in the name of Senator Misha Fubler, the Junior Minister for the Cabinet Office and Innovation. Senator Fubler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the Privacy Commissioner's Pre-Implementation Annual Report, January 2020 to December 2024, submitted by the Privacy Commissioner in accordance with the provisions of Section 37 of the Personal Information Protection Act, 2016. Senators can access a copy of the report on their tablets and or the Parliament website. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fubler. And the next announcement is in the name of Senator Caesar, but we will have as the spokesperson for finance, but I call on Minister Wilkinson to present.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of the Senate the Chartered Professional Accountants of Bermuda Amendment Bylaws 2025, an exercise of the power conferred by Section 7 of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Bermuda Act 1973, makes the following bylaws which, pursuant to Section 7, Sub 2 of that Act, have been approved by a majority of the members of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Bermuda. Senators may access copies on their tablets and or on the Parliament website.
Thank you, Minister Wilkinson. The next announcement is in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs. Senator Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the Electricity Amendment Act 2022, Consequential Amendments Regulation 2023, as made by the Minister responsible for energy in exercise of the power conferred by Section 12.2 of the Electricity Amendment Act 2022. Senators may access copies of the regulation on their
Thank you. I believe you have
innovative, responsible for energy and exercise of the powers conferred by Section 54 of 2016 and Section 5 of the Regulatory President.
The next announcement is in the name of Senator Misha Fubler, the Junior Minister for Tourism, Transport, Culture, and Sport. Senator Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the Bermuda Airport Authority Annual Report 2022-2023. Senators may access copies on their tablets and/or the Parliament website.
Thank you, Senator Fabler. And the next announcement is in the name of Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister of Economy and Labor. Senator Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the factors driving emigration in Bermuda report, January 2025. Senators may access copies on their tablets and/or from the Parliament website.
Thank you. And I believe you have a second announcement.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the Department of Statistics May 2024 Labor Force Survey Report. Senators may access copies on their tablets and/or the Parliament website.
Thank you, Senator Bell. Item number 6 on the order paper is a notice of motion. And we do have a notice of motion, and that is in the name of Senator Misha Fabler, the Junior Minister of Tourism, Transport, Culture, and Sport. Senator Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the Tourism Investment Clearwater Community Event Venue Order 2025, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for tourism with the written agreement of the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 5 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017. And I give notice that at a later point in the meeting, I will move that the said draft order be approved. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Misha Fabler. Item number 7, petitions. There are none. Item number 8, statements. And we have 4 statements this morning. The first is in the name of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Senator the Honorable Kim Wilkerson. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. If you would just allow me a moment to pull it up.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah, okay.
This paper, Madam President, is clarification on the legal status of cannabis possession. Madam President, I rise today to speak briefly on a matter that has drawn much media and public attention. That is the issue of cannabis use and regulation. Madam President, while the government is moving forward with the intended reform of our cannabis laws, I find it prudent to remind the public that cannabis use in public remains illegal in Bermuda. Motivated by the principles of social justice and the desire to stop criminalizing adults for their personal use choices, this government decriminalized the possession of 7 grams or less under the Misuse of Drugs Decriminalization of Cannabis Amendment Act 2017. However, decriminalization is not the same as legalization. Given the immense interest and recent issues surrounding the sale of cannabis products, I thought it wise to remind the community on the current legal position. Madam President, this government's position remains the same, that we are pursuing a path to simplify obtaining cannabis for medicinal purposes, that we are creating a framework to clarify and regulate the import, sale, and use of cannabis products, and that we desire to provide opportunities for local cultivation of cannabis, all while remaining conscious of our status as a British overseas territory and the restrictions that are imposed upon us as a result. So, Madam President, alongside these upcoming legislative changes, there must and will be public health considerations taken into account, especially when it comes to our young people. However, the future is not yet present, and our young people are too often being exposed either through proximity to smokers or by consuming drugs themselves, an exposure that their young bodies and minds cannot handle. Madam President, the decision to decriminalize the possession of 7 grams of cannabis came out of a desire to ensure that we did not continue to met out life-altering convictions to individuals that were completely disproportionate to the offense. That was not intended to convey to the public that marijuana use is completely harmless. Any substance, including alcohol, can be harmful to the user depending on the potency and amount consumed. Madam President, many adults in Bermuda recreationally use cannabis. All the way back in 2006, Bermuda recognized the detrimental effect of secondhand cigarette smoke and banned smoking in all enclosed public spaces and workplaces. While children can, of course, experience detrimental psychological effects from exposure to an intoxicated adult who has drunk too much, they do not consume the alcohol itself secondhand. But this is not the case with cannabis. Adult users who may have become accustomed to smoking cannabis indoors with children present may not even realize they are exposing these children to a contact high that is detrimental to their minds. Behavioral issues that seem to appear out of nowhere can now be traced to this exposure. Madam President, the government continues to support a path to safe adult recreational use of cannabis. However, even as we move forward in this direction, we need to be mindful of exposing young people to cannabis, both through secondhand smoke and through normalizing the use of it at a young age. As of the 2023 National School Survey, 28.5% of S4 students have used marijuana. Most male users initiated marijuana use at 12 years or younger, whereas female users have started at 15 years old. Many local families have reported symptoms of psychosis in their young people who've used cannabis. These incidents have been increasing in the past few years as strains become more potent. The misperception that recreational cannabis use is now legal here in Bermuda is held by many of these young people. Madam President, I urge members of our community to restrict their cannabis use to locations without children present and to speak with their children about the dangers of cannabis use. Young minds are still developing, and cannabis use can have irreversible psychiatric effect on some children and teenagers, burdening them with psychiatric disorders that could have been avoided if you started at a later age. Madam President, we must balance moving forward with a society that allows adults to make their own decisions on recreational cannabis use with understanding the current legal position as it stands today, and in particular, protecting our young people from the effects of a drug that can cause irreversible harm to them. I do not stand here today in judgment, Madam President, but merely to encourage the adult members of our community to be aware of and respect the current legal position, and more importantly, to recognize that they set the example for young people in their lives. So let us all be good examples. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister Wilkerson, Minister of Justice, for your statement. The second statement is in the name of Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister of Economy and Labor. Senator Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, Senate colleagues and listening audience. Today, I rise to lay the May 2024 Labor Force Survey Report and highlight for members of this Honorable Senate the key findings of the survey. The Labor Force Survey is an economic tool that measures employment, unemployment, and economically inactive population. The May 2024 Labor Force Survey results show that Bermuda's labor market remains robust. The islands reported an increased employment and very low unemployment rate of 1.6%. Madam President, the unemployment rate for Bermuda stood at 1.6% in May 2024, which is a decrease from the rate reported in November 2023. This is another positive indicator as economic and labor policies continue to support the local employment. The youth unemployment rate for persons aged 16 to 24 stood at 2.4% in May 2024. This reduction from November 2023 youth unemployment rate was due to a combination of factors: more employment in more employed youth and fewer youth seeking employment. Madam President, other relevant findings from the May 2024 survey include the following. The employment rate increased to 81.4%. The median gross annual income from a person's main job increased to $73,157. Bermudians comprise 76.3% of the working population. The labor force participation rate was 82.8%. The average hours worked per week in a main job was 41.3. And among the economically inactive population, 63.1% were retired. Notably, there was a growth in the Bermudian working population and growth in the Bermudian median gross annual income. Madam President, while the findings indicate progress in terms of a steady improvement and growth in the labor market, the government will continue to press on with its effective policies and programs that support Bermuda's workers. Madam President, investment in people is a cornerstone in Bermuda's economic development strategy. The Bermuda government has consistently prioritized workforce development, recognizing that a well-trained and educated populace is essential for economic growth and stability. By investing in education, training, and certification programs, the government is enhancing Bermudian skills and fostering a culture of continuous learning and professional development. These efforts have led to more competitive and resilient workforce capable of adapting to the changing market demands and driving innovation. And as a result, Bermudians are better equipped to secure high-quality jobs, contribute to the economy, and enjoy a higher standard of living. This strategic focus on human capital development ensures Bermuda remains a vibrant and prosperous community where everyone can thrive. Madam President, under the stewardship of the newly established National Certification and Apprenticeship Board, significant strides have been made to enhance the quality, relevance, and accessibility to apprenticeships and certification programs across the island. As a result, the number of apprentices has risen to 52. 34 additional Bermudians have earned the prestigious National Center for Construction Education and Research Core Industry Certification, which is essential for construction and related trades. 26 scholarship recipients are pursuing studies overseas in US, Canada, UK, and the Caribbean, while 10 others are engaged in short-term technical and vocational training courses. Additionally, the government launched several specialized programs to address specific skill shortages and create new employment pathways. These included micro-credential courses and the Learn Through Experience program. We've also embraced innovative methods such as on-the-job training program in partnership with the financial assistance to upskill Bermudians and meet evolving employer demands. Madam President, this work is being carried out by the Department of Workforce Development, which last year serviced 683 individuals directly and with a robust monthly employment skills calendar of courses catered to an additional 439 participants. These innovations collectively demonstrated our commitment to empowering our workforce and fostering economic sustainability. By investing in diverse training programs and innovative upskilling strategies, the government ensures that Bermudians have the skills to excel in dynamic industries and contribute to meaningfully to the island's development. Madam President, the success stories across sectors are a testament to the power of education, hands-on experience, and strategic partnerships in shaping a resilient and prosperous future for Bermuda. I encourage all Bermudians, whether you're just entering the workforce, seeking to enhance your skills, or considering a career change, to take full advantage of the programs and services offered by the Department of Workforce Development. The team is there to support you in your career guidance, training opportunities, apprenticeship placements, and job referrals tailored to your specific goals. I invite you to explore the services offered by the department online at www.dwd.bm. Your future starts with a single step, and let us help you take it. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Lauren Bell. I believe you have a second statement. When you're ready, you can present it.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I rise today to lay the January 2025 Immigration Survey Report and highlight for members of this Honorable Senate the key findings of the survey. The retaining of the Local Workforce Position Paper 2024 highlights Bermuda's declining birth rate, aging population, and increase in emigration of the local population. As noted in the position paper, migration is a social phenomenon, the causes of which can vary widely. While it's not uncommon for Bermuda to experience migration, emigration, if excessive, can be challenging for our very small community. Madam President, there is no doubt Bermuda requires a skilled and experienced workforce to drive economic growth and innovation. And when talented individuals leave the island, the loss of human capital can hinder our ability to compete in the global market. We can lose knowledge, expertise, and contributions to the local economic development. Against that backdrop, the Ministry of Economy and Labor engaged global research to better understand the degree of emigration, what motivated Bermudians to leave the island, and what might entice them to return. Madam President, global research conducted the 3 studies on Bermuda's emigration, undertaking qualitative and quantitative research. The first phase included an in-depth interview with 20 emigrated Bermudians. The second phase surveyed 105 emigrated Bermudians. And the third phase surveyed 416 adult Bermudians currently on island. The survey reveals that the most common reasons cited for emigration are 1, the high cost of living and the lack of affordability, particularly beyond retirement. 2, limited employment opportunities. And 3, lack of job growth. These economic pressures prompted Bermudians to seek better prospects overseas. When comparing quality of life, respondents reported significantly higher satisfaction with life overseas, particularly in areas such as cost of living, healthcare affordability, access to social activities, and overall life satisfaction. Madam President, the survey also asked what might have prevented emigration. Respondents pointed to a more manageable cost of living, increased job opportunities, improved public and post-secondary education, and initiatives to make Bermuda a more vibrant and appealing place to live. To encourage Bermudians to remain or return, the most popular suggestions included addressing the high cost of living, engaging with those who have left to understand their reasons, improving educational opportunities, and expanding employment perspectives. Respondents emphasized the need to lower costs in essential areas such as food, healthcare, housing, retirement, as well as better access to affordable home ownership. While the survey found that many Bermudians value family, friendships, and the island's natural beauty and safety, it also highlighted concerns about governance, rising crime, and limited social opportunities. Overall satisfaction with life in Bermuda was rated as fair, with the highest satisfaction in personal relationships and safety, and the lowest in cost of living, healthcare, and governance. Notably, 53% of respondents indicated they may consider emigrating in the future, with 7% likely to do so within the next 2 years. This is a significant portion of our population, and it is imperative that we listen to their concerns and act decisively. Madam President, these findings present both a challenge as well as an opportunity. They challenge us to confront the realities facing our people, but they also offer a roadmap for meaningful change. By addressing affordability, expanding opportunity, and enhancing the quality of life, we can create a Bermuda where more of our people choose to stay and where those who have left feel welcome to remain. The beauty of the island, being close to family and friends and living in a safe environment, were all aspects that respondents valued about the life in Bermuda. The top 5 factors motivating Bermudians to emigrate are 1, the high cost of living, 2, difficulty in retiring in Bermuda, 3, overall management of Bermuda and the economy, 4, the availability of career opportunities in Bermuda, and 5, quality of life and activities in Bermuda. Madam President, in conclusion, the feedback from the global research survey work revealed that respondents appreciated having their opinions heard. They highlighted the beauty of the island, the safety of the environment, and the proximity to family and friends as key factors for enjoying life in Bermuda. However, the primary motivation for Bermudians considering emigration included the high cost of living, the challenges in retiring, concerns about management of the economy, limited career opportunities, quality of life and activities, public school education standards, availability of specialized health care for persons with disabilities, and issues related to gang culture, crime, and violence. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Bell. And Senators, I have allowed a 4th statement, and that is in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, and the title is the Cost of Living Summit. And I do believe that this has been placed on the SharePoint, and you should have access to it.
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Simmons, yes, carry on.
Thank you. Madam President, I rise today to share an important update on behalf of the Ministry of Home Affairs regarding the success of the 2025 Cost of Living Summit, convened on June 25th at the Hamilton Princess Hotel. The summit brought together 258 residents and stakeholders from across Bermuda and was live streamed to ensure full access and transparency. It marked a pivotal moment in our government's ongoing commitment to address the cost of living challenges that so many of our people are facing daily. Madam President, the Cost of Living Summit was a bold and strategic move from the Ministry of Home Affairs, demonstrating its commitment to address the pressing matter of cost in Bermuda. The Ministry of Home Affairs, under the leadership of Minister Alexa Lightbourne, created a forum where policymakers, business leaders, and community activists could come together in one space to share insights and seek practical solutions. We are grateful to all those who participated in the day's candid and constructive dialogue, covering critical themes, imports, food security, utilities, housing, and healthcare. Intentional efforts was made to ensure the diversity of participants and discussions were enriched by the range of lived experiences and expertise that often held in separate forums. The summit instead offered an intricate platform to examine the factors driving Bermuda's cost. Madam President, the summit opened with presentations by economists Craig Simmons and Dr. Janai Smith, who framed the day's discussion with key findings from the March 2025 Cost of Living Survey. They highlighted Bermuda's shift towards an international business economy and the pressure that have resulted on housing, food, healthcare, and utilities. Panel discussions explored key drivers of cost and potential solutions. Topics included Bermuda's import dependency and the need for trade diversification, the impact of freight costs and digitization, food pricing challenges, and the importance of expanding local agriculture and fisheries. Additional panels address urgent modernization of utilities and reforms to planning and landlord-tenant laws to tackle housing affordability. Remarks from the Honorable Kim Wilson and the Honorable Zane De Silva reinforced the government's commitment to health care, access, and affordable housing. Madam President, this summit achieved its goal to educate, inform, gather feedback, and reinforce the government's commitment to action rooted in real data and lived realities. The ministry is now compiling the insights from the summit alongside survey data into a comprehensive report, including its costs, which will be tabled in the House of Assembly and shared publicly in the coming months. Importantly, legislative and policy review have already commenced. Public consultation on the revised Landlord and Tenant Act will begin this July. Key stakeholders in retail, wholesale, and utilities have already pledged their support, and these commitments will be made public via costofliving.gov.bm also in the coming weeks. The Cost of Living Commission continues to provide support and have met to further review the summit's output and finalize the ministry's implementation roadmap, including regulatory reform milestones. Feedback from the public and industry has been positive. The summit closed with attendees signing a commitment wall, symbolizing their role in building a more affordable Bermuda, and with an invitation for all residents to complete public policy feedback surveys, which will be opened until July 4th. Madam President, on behalf of the Ministry of Home Affairs, I extend my heartfelt thanks to many stakeholders, public servants, and the citizens who shared that real progress comes not from words alone, but from action. I'd like to also thank the ministry staff for their commitment to the summit's success. I look forward to providing a future update on the strategy and roadmap ahead in support of lowering costs for the people of Bermuda. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs. Moving on now, the next item on our order paper, introduction of bills. There are none. The first reading of public bills. The following public bills have been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and are hereby read for the first time. Their titles are respectively the Insurance Amendment Act 2025 and the Trademarks Amendment Act 2025. And Senators, these bills will be taken up on our orders of the day. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, the question and question period. Senators, we will now entertain questions from the statements. We will entertain questions, responses from the questions that have been placed beforehand, the parliamentary questions. And the first one, I think, was to Senator Misha Fubler to provide oral responses to parliamentary questions from Senator Marcus Jones. And perhaps, Senator Jones, you may state your question. First question.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to you and my fellow senators and to the listening audience. This question, as stated by Madam President, was made to Senator Misha Fabla. And the question is, will the junior minister please inform the Senate as to how many of the 600 taxi permits in circulation are actively in use, and whether there are plans to increase the numbers considering the overwhelming pressure on the taxi industry to service locals and visitors?
Senator Misha Fubler.
Thank you, Madam President. And there are currently 552 motor taxis licensed, and at this time, there is no plan to increase the number of licenses.
Supplementary?
Absolutely, yes.
Is there a penalty for taxi permits inactive for long periods of time? And if so, are they enforced?
Madam President, if you'd provide me some time to confirm with the technical officer around the penalty for long periods of not being used.
Thank you, Misha. Senator Fubler. Senator Jones, do you have a second sub?
No, I'll rest
So
with that.
you'll
Just
rest.
that one. Yes, thank you.
We'll wait for a response then.
All right, apologies for the delay, Madam President. In short, no, there is no penalty for long periods of misuse, but I encourage the senator to review the relevant act that would outline any such penalty.
Senator Jones, you have a
The
question?
second question for the junior minister is, can he please inform the Senate as to how many taxi dispatch companies or services are currently active in the taxi industry, and whether the ministry has identified any companies or services operating outside of the relevant provisions of the Motor Car Act of 1951?
Thank you, Madam President. There are 4 dispatch companies licensed by the Public Service Vehicles Licensing Board, and currently no company or service has been identified as operating outside of the relevant provisions of the Motor Car Act of 1951.
Senator
Thank
Jones?
you. Thank you to the junior minister. I do not have any supplementaries.
Thank you, Senator Jones, for your questions, and Senator Fabler for your responses. The next questions have been presented also to Senator Fabler, Misha Fabler, and those questions are from Senator Foley. Senator Foley, would you like to present your question?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President, and good morning, everyone, fellow senators. My question to Senator Misha Fabler, following the Ernst & Young Culture Review commissioned by the Bermuda Tourism Authority, BTA, can the junior minister please inform the Senate as to what actions the government is taking to address the concerns raised and to ensure that public funds are being managed under a culture of accountability and professionalism?
Thank you, Madam President. And in response to the question, the Bermuda Tourism Authority Board retains full responsibility for addressing the outcomes and recommendations stemming from the cultural review commissioned by the Bermuda Tourism Authority and is ultimately responsible for the full operations of the BTA. That being said, I am confident, and the minister is as well, that the BTA board will respond appropriately to the findings and will implement the required changes. Thank you, Madam President.
Foley?
I do have a supplemental question. Will the Ministry of Tourism commit to publicly releasing a progress report on the implementation of the Ernst & Young Review's recommendations?
Madam President, my understanding of the reporting structure is that a decision of that nature, reporting on the operations of the BTA, would sit with the BTA's board and not with the ministry. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Tannock.
Thank you. This is just following on from Senator Foley's question. Is there a timeline? Has the board given a timeline? I understand that you've said that management rests with the BTA. However, they are funds out of the public purse dispersed by the government. So to say that it is sufficient, that you are assured that they will handle it, considering they have a track record of not responding in a timely fashion. We saw what happened earlier this year when they were pressed for a response as to the environment there and what was happening with the exiting staff. Can we assume that the government at least is asking the BTA board for a timeline of implementation?
Thank you, Madam President. I will endeavor to provide a response at a later date, but again, the operational responsibility for the BTA sits with the board, and that's all I have in response to that question.
Senator Foley?
I do have a second supplemental question, and thank you, Senator Taddock, for your question. How is the government ensuring that the current leadership and board are held accountable for fostering a healthy organizational culture and meeting tourism performance targets.
Thank you, Madam President. I shouldn't be asking the questions of the questioners, but I am a little confused with Senator Foley's line of questioning, given that as recently as I think March or April, the OBA has publicly called for an end of political interference within the operations of the BTA. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the questions, but now it sounds like they are asking for us to be more closely involved in their operations. Thank you.
Supplemental, Madam President?
Yes, certainly.
To provide a little bit of clarity and light combined with a question, being that the Minister of Tourism brought into the public space the issues that the BTA was challenged with by bringing it into the public space and putting it out there, wouldn't the junior ministers agree that by putting it out there in the public space and the questions being out there, that the public should then be justified in looking for a answer, or at least a report that shows progress or change? Thank you, Madam President.
Mhm.
Thank you, Madam President. I do believe that the minister's statement that was made was in response to leaks from the Bermuda Tourism Authority, and I do think that it would be more appropriate for information requests or perhaps PATA requests to be made to the BTA board, as it would be inappropriate for the ministry to comment on the operational realities of the Bermuda Tourism Authority.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Minister Fabio. I do understand your position at this point. To be able to be frank and give a transparent answer may be difficult, but I think the question still remains. I think the public would like to know at some point, although it cannot be settled in this chamber.
Thank you, Senator Jones. We will move on. Yes, I think this.
Sorry, Madam President, just an additional point to around being frank and transparent. I do encourage the senators and the listening public to review the Bermuda Tourism Authority's annual reports as they are laid before Parliament, and they speak to kind of the specificity of how the funds are being allocated, which I think was part of the nature of the original written question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fabler. The next question, the series of questions, was also to Senator Fabler to provide oral responses to questions from Senator Foley. Senator Foley?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. To Senator Misha Fubler, regarding several publicly owned buildings across Bermuda, including the former Clearwater Middle School in St. David's, remain underutilized or vacant. Can the junior minister please inform the Senate as to the government's plan for the adaptive reuse of these vacant facilities, and whether any are being prioritized for redevelopment into community hubs that address social isolation amongst seniors especially, and provide services for youth and working families? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Madam President. I am excited to hear language like adaptive reuse. As a student of city planning and urban development, that is something that I am always keen to see. And I would like to share that the government is in the process of developing a comprehensive master plan regarding the vacant and underutilized buildings. And once this master plan is complete and approved, we look forward to sharing it publicly. And I suppose it is worth noting that redeveloping these facilities into community hubs are part of the considerations being made for their adaptive reuse. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Foley.
Sure. I did have a second, actually, my first supplemental was regarding conducting or commission an audit of available public buildings to access their potential for community-focused redevelopment. So I'm assuming that what the Junior Minister just stated is a part of that, especially particularly in underserved areas like the east end of the island. So I appreciate his response on that. My second question, supplemental question, will the government commit to formal community consultation process before repurposing or redevelopment decisions are finalized? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Foley.
Madam President, the Ministry has received many ideas presented from the public over the years, from small community-focused businesses to large-scale uses. And the guiding principle for that it should be that all the models that are sustainable and meet the most community need is what will be used in deciding how the buildings are going to be reused. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Foley. You're satisfied with the answer. The next series of questions were presented to the Honorable Crystal Caesar, and as I had indicated, Minister of Justice Wilkerson will respond to these questions.
Thank you, Madam
From
President.
Cunningham, sorry, Senator Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. My first question relates to education. So can the, Honorable AG please provide the Senate with an update on the development and finalization of the Signature Learning Program curriculums for the signature schools, including a timeline for when these curricula will be fully implemented and whether they have been accredited or reviewed by any external educational standards bodies to ensure quality and relevance?
Minister Wilkerson.
Thank you, Senator Caesar. Thank you, Madam President. With the absence of the substantive minister, I will read the response that I have received from her technical team. I will not be able to go back for supplementals that are not anticipated in the question. So I wanted to start there. So the short answer is yes. First, it is important to impart that curricula are complex and go far beyond the written text of what is taught for a particular subject or subject area. Curricula consist of objectives, standards, learning expectations, various types of learning content, teaching and self-instruction methods, recommended assessments, resources for teachers and students, reference to cross-curricular experiences, unit and modules of time, key vocabularies, amongst many other elements. There are also important characteristics in a high-quality curriculum, such that it is planned and systematic, is inclusive, consultative, and responsive to student learning needs, is cyclical in nature, values each and every child and student, includes high-quality, relevant, and appropriate content, is underpinned by research and evidence-based practices about how young people learn, sets expectations for students, teachers, schools, learning environments, and the Department of Education and other high-level advisors and decision makers, and consists of systemic, regular, and meaningful evaluation. So with respect to the Signature Learning Program, SLP curricula, that SLP has been developed for year 9, years 10 through 12 for Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute. The new SLP curricula for Sandy Secondary Middle School will be ready for the start of the 2025 school year for students. However, it will require ongoing development throughout the school year and beyond. As per the characteristics of high-quality curricula, the SLP curriculum are being reviewed and monitored on a continuous basis by senior schools and the Department of Education and the Education Reform Unit for ongoing improvement and effectiveness. Therefore, the curricula cannot be said to be finalized because adjustments and tailoring will continue to take place as a result of student need and interest and student, teacher, and school leadership feedback. Curricula has, all locally developed curricula must meet accepted curricular standards, and the BTAC, Business and Technology Council, Cambridge, City and Guilds, and other curricula culminate in international qualifications for students. The minister has posited an invitation with respect to future engagement and has offered for all Senate colleagues, and I certainly would be interested in participating myself, in offering a technical update once the school year has started for the entire Senate team. So that is on offer for us to share more of the content and bring it to life for colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wilkerson, Attorney General, and Minister of Justice. Senator Cunningham, you have had the response.
I do, and I know that it was highlighted that there were unlikely to be answers to supplemental questions, but I got from that rather long answer that it's complex. Building out curriculums takes time. There's, objective standards, content. My question is around the issue that we have with current S3 students who have just graduated from S3 heading into S4 next year for the final year of their signature learning, who started in S1 on this program. And I guess my question is, how many of these students have actually done any signature learning content? Because it is my belief that many of these programs have not been delivered to them to this point. But I can await a written answer from the minister if that's the easier way to progress.
I think in the circumstances, what the text of the answers that I've gotten have said is that it certainly, I think you're referring to the middle school, and it does only refer to Sunday Secondary Middle School. So I don't.
I'm purely talking about Cedar Bridge and Berkeley, the established signature schools already. And whether if in S1, so those current S3 graduating classes who are going into S4 next year, when they were in S1 and they choose to do finance and international business, have they been having classes or any signature learning content on international business or indeed STEM at Cedar Bridge?
Okay, I accept that's a different question from curricula.
Well, it's the curriculum for those signature programs.
I think you're asking is whether it's being delivered.
Yes.
Right. My colleague to the back, who is the chair of Cedar Bridge, is saying that it is being delivered. I believe that it would be better to wait for the substantive minister, as she's offered to give us an entire technical walkthrough. And I think that we will be able to, we may all have supplemental questions at that point in time. Thank you, because this is a topic of importance to the entire community.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly as members of the government and as senators, I know we are being engaged in conversations every day about the status of public school in general, but particularly about the signature learning program. So I understand the interest that Senator Cunningham has, and look forward to, I think, being part of that that cohort to undertake the advanced, my colleague calls it a deep technical update. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. You had a second question to
I do have a second question to our finance spokesperson, to, I guess, Madam AG. Will the Madam AG please provide the Senate with the number of companies currently in arrears with their social insurance contributions and what steps are being taken to recover any outstanding amounts?
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Thank you, Madam President. The number of active employers that are in arrears as of May 31, 2024 is 1,738. This accounts for 7,400 175 employees. With respect to steps taken to recover outstanding amounts, to assist with debt collection efforts, summons in the magistrate's court. Should these efforts to collect outstanding contributions prove unsuccessful, the matter may be escalated to the Attorney General's Debt Enforcement Unit for Supreme Court proceedings. There are currently 100 employers who have been referred by the department to the Debt Enforcement Unit at the Attorney General's chambers already. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Wilkerson. Senator Cunningham.
I have one supplemental, or two supplementals, but one. So I'm aware that employees can go onto there's some database, or they can go to the Accountant General to check the status of their social insurance payments. But I'm just wondering what recourse is available to employees, especially those coming up to or close to retirement, who maybe later discover that those required contributions have not been paid on their behalf, what recourse those employees may have, either against their employers or against the government, in order to get their basically retirement funds.
So if I could just paraphrase, I think your question is, what actions can be led by an aggrieved employee as opposed to the actions being taken by the Department of Social Insurance through the Debt Enforcement Agency?
Well, yeah, I mean, how could these employees basically get the contributions that their social insurance should be paying out upon retirement?
Well, they'll only be able to get them as a result of the enforcement actions.
So they would have no, sorry, Madam President, they would have no ability to collect a pension from their social insurance contributions if their employer had never paid social insurance for them.
I don't know the answer to that question. It's actually outside of the scope of the question that you've asked. You could have asked that from the start. Effectively, it's if I might add, a kind of logical follow-up to the questions that you asked.
And then I have one further supplemental, and that would be the Madam AG mentioned 1,738 companies currently in arrears. Are these companies, well, I guess it's twofold. So are any of these companies actually in the international business arena? And therefore, does this, even if they aren't, does this impact any ability to get, the process of work permits, BMA license registration, anything like that? Is there any kind of carrot that's dangled to ensure that the compliance with the payments of these social insurance dues?
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. I do not have a breakdown on the categorization of the 1,738 active companies that are in arrears. And you might understand, I think the question was, which companies are 90 days in arrears? So nor do we have a breakdown of the aging of those receivables, but I think these would be good data points to return with, so we can undertake to give those in writing.
Senator White, Vice President White, you have a question?
I do have a question. Thank you, Madam President. Is there any consideration being given to name and shame as a means to collect. I remember years ago, whether it be payroll tax or social contributions or pensions, I remember that name and shame was used to assist in collection. So I'm just wondering whether that idea could be considered with respect to those employers that are withholding contributions and using those funds for their own operating purposes, when they should be sending them on for the benefit of their employees for when they retire. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President White. Senator Lindsay Simmons, you and
Thank you, Madam President. I can say when it comes to work permits that in order to get a work permit, if you're delinquent, you have to set up a payment plan or pay off the arrears in order to be able to apply for a work permit. So we are making sure that people reach out to not only social insurance but payroll tax as well. You need these letters from the company to say that you're in good standing.
thank you.
Yes, and Madam President, I think to Senator White's question as to whether a naming shaming campaign is part of the debt recovery efforts, I cannot say that it is at this point in time, but I do recall previously that had been the case, and in a small community, I accept that could be effective. But certainly, I think understanding all of the reasons why a particular company might be in arrears is also important from the perspective of just social balance.
Thank you, Minister Wilkerson. No further comment or questions. Then, Senator, I would like to just say that that's the the end of the questions that were presented for oral responses today. And therefore, we will now move on to questions from the statements that were presented this morning. And the first statement was in the name of Senator the Honorable Kim Wilkerson, Attorney General and Minister of Justice. And what the statement she presented was the clarification on legal status of cannabis possession. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'd like to thank the Attorney General for bringing this to the public's attention. I think it has been discussed in many different social circles. So I think getting it out there is definitely important. And I would hope that the government has plans outside of just this statement to educate the public. But I do have a few questions. The first one being, what data is available on cannabis-related arrests and convictions since the decriminalization in 2017? Therefore, allowing us to see if there's evidence that the law is actually working as anticipated.
Just if you could clarify the question, do you mean the law with respect to
The
decriminalization?
Yeah.
I believe the law, I don't have a good cut on the data, but I believe that the law is working as intended, particularly when you think about the impact of decriminalization on a criminal record. If it's a younger person whose intention is to perhaps apply for a scholarship or to leave the island for further education. And those were the kinds of motivations around, the rationale for decrim in the first place.
Senator John, what?
I was going to have a supplemental to that.
You can do your supplemental.
So supplemental to that is, has there been a measurable reduction in cannabis-related criminal records or prosecution rates, especially amongst young people?
I do not have the answer to the question on the cut on data, but I can undertake to bring that back to the Senate.
Thank you. Senator Cunningham. Vice President John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I was a very strong opponent of the commercialization of cannabis legislation that was brought forward a couple of years ago, and I remain strongly opposed to it for a variety of reasons, being the safety of the people in our community and also the views of the UK government and at the federal level in the US. So I note in the AG's statement reference to government moving forward with the intended reform of our cannabis laws. Is there any more detail you can provide on that comment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President John White.
Thank you, Senator White. And I note your concerns generally. Unfortunately, I cannot give any more detail on the intended reform at this time. As we know, the substantive Minister for National Security sits in another place. But I can say that our ministries are working collaboratively. And I think that, one of the points and the reason that I wanted to make this statement today is particularly in light of summer holidays. I just felt it, important that an adult stand up and say, this is not good for young people. And I think that hasn't been in the public discourse. And certainly protection for young people will guide the steps that we're making, which are mainly around clarification on the medicinal cannabis regime, which we also understand is important for people with certain health conditions and so on. But I think being able to make a clear line that what might be good for adults in certain circumstances is never going to be good for children.
Senator Cunningham first, and then you.
Thank you, Madam President. So your statement mentioned that there was a 2023 National School Survey in which a staggering 28.5% of S4 students have used marijuana, with male use starting at 12 or younger and female users at 15. Is there any idea of what that was, say, in 2020 or in 2017, to see if we've, what targets are being hit or not, if the case may be?
I don't have the full report at hand at the moment, which does give an indication, this is through the Department of National Drug Control, of the trends. There is concern that the trend is toward a more comfortable attitude toward cannabis use as people see other people standing in the street. There is a view that it's okay, and I think that the statistics are bearing that out. The young people are that's probably greater than in prior years. But I will get the actual statistics. Thank you,
Senator Marcus Jones, you have the position of leader of the Senate. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I first of all want to extend my thanks to Madam AG for bringing clarity from the government standpoint in regards to this particular subject. There's been a number of times where I've had this discussion with young people as well, and I think this 3-page statement definitely brought some clarity. My question would be a request for more clarity on the same topic when it comes to visitors importing cannabis, whether it's medicinal or for recreational use. If she can clarify for us the laws that surround importation of cannabis, its quantities, and the grounds on which medicinal cannabis being imported is allowed.
Thank you, Madam President. Currently, there is no basis on which an individual can import cannabis of any kind that would be legal. That's regardless of the amount. Importation, so the decriminalization, what we colloquially refer to as the Decrim Bill of 2017, relates to simple possession only, right? So there have been no moves around a relaxation, legalization, or decriminalization of importation. And at the moment, any importation, even with respect to medicinal cannabis, has to be done pursuant to a license. And those licenses are in a set framework. But that is the regime that is currently, that framework, under review. And so it would be inappropriate to speak more on that regime right now. But I think your question related, if I read it correctly, the confusion around and what an individual might do, particularly a tourist. Right, yes.
Sen-
Madam
Senator
President.
Tannock.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam AG. Your predecessor, the former AG, mentioned in March 2025 that there would be a steering committee formed to address legislation that was fit for constitutional purpose. And by that, I interpreted it that she meant that the government would be looking at something like a medicinal cannabis bill, amending the Misuse of Drugs Acts, or applying for the exemption that Canada currently holds for recreational marijuana use. What is the position of this steering committee? Has it been formed, and where are we with proposing legislation?
Thank you, Senator Tannock.
Yeah. As I've already indicated, Madam President, I'm not the substantive minister in relation to that. That is under the purview of the Minister of National Drug Control. As I've already said, I think the frameworks are under review. You referred to my predecessor in March 2025. I think I was in the seat in March 2025. So you might have meant March 2024.
My apologies.
Yes, no worries. So I think, as I said in my statement, I think this government is continually working toward a framework, but there is still a lot to do in that regard. And I won't speak out of place with respect to what is in the purview of the substantive minister who sits in another place.
Thank you, Madam AG. With no further questions then on the topic, then that first statement, then the questions on the ministerial statement, then we've completed that. We'll move on then to the second statement, and that was in the name of the Honorable Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor, and that was on development and training, a training update. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Jones, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Again, thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank the Junior Minister for providing us with this statement. And I had one question, strictly a question that requires clarifications. When determining the unemployment rate and the employment rate, how many hours per week is this statistic based on to qualify a person being fully employed as opposed to being underemployed?
Senator Lauren Bell, Junior Minister of Economy and Labor. The question is to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Can I request that I get all the questions for that statement at once, and then I can provide the answers? Thank you.
Certainly. Senators, you've heard the request. Yes, sorry, Senator White, Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have one question for the Junior Minister. References made in the statement to the Department of Workforce Development servicing 683 individuals directly last year. Can the Junior Minister provide some sort of data or narrative around how successful the department would have been in assisting the execution of those individuals to obtain full-time jobs or part-time jobs? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President John White. Senator Cunningham, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for your statement, Junior Minister. I actually think all three of the upcoming, this statement and the other two, are fairly intertwined. But my question on this statement, similar to Vice President White's, is tracking the metrics of the Department of Workforce Development Program. So how are we tracking where these individuals are going after they've completed the programs, and how are we sure that they're not taking the skills that they've learned here and taking them overseas, that then we're contributing to our immigration issues because of cost of living, just to wrap it all in together. And that would be, and then I have a second question. Great to see that the youth unemployment rate is at 2.4%. But my question is around the sustainability of that number, and whether this is not just a case, well, as a percentage of the total employed numbers, people, I would think that our youth is decreasing given our declining birth rate. But I would just like to know, this is ultimately a number, I think, because our youth are not returning upon the completion of their studies overseas, or they are moving overseas in search of more opportunities. So I'd be interested to know what actual number of youth this 16 to 24-year-olds were at May 2024, maybe compared to, say, May 2017. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham.
Yes, Madam President.
Yes, Senator
My
Tannock.
question actually comes, so thank you very much, Senator Val, for this report. My question comes from the way in which some of the information is collected, and that may impact the results. So we have here that we are being told that the employment rate has increased to 81.4%. But if we look at the actual survey itself, we see that also counted are individuals who work unpaid in family businesses, so they can work in family businesses or work unpaid in family businesses. Are we counting people who work unpaid as part of that increase in the employment rate? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Mhm.
Thank you, Madam President and colleagues, for those questions. If you just bear with me while I get some responses and clarity from the technical team.
Okay. Mhm. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think when these people come into the chamber, they should just bring a little piece of paper and say who they are and what they're here for. Because in the chamber, if they sit in the gallery, I don't care. But if they're in the chamber, you like to move Right, yeah, true. True enough, yeah. Yeah. I don't know what these are. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Senator Bell, are you able to give any responses at this time, or you want to give it at a later time?
Yeah, my technical team is compiling some responses, but I am cognizant of the time. And if my colleagues are willing, I'm happy to provide written answers at a later date if that's their preference.
Or if you get the responses before we, at a later time in the meeting.
Okay, if that's agreeable, that would be fine.
Senators, are you agreeable? They are agreeable, so we will wait and see if toward the end of the meeting of the Senate that you can provide responses to those questions at that time. So senators, with that said, what we will do then is to move on to the next statement that was also given by Senator Lauren Bell. Do you have any questions? And that is factors driving immigration in Bermuda. Does any senator have questions on that statement? Senator Marcus Jones, opposition leader in the Senate, you can pose your question.
Thank you, Madam President. I do thank the junior minister for bringing this to this chamber. And I would say just as important as us knowing the factors that drive emigration from Bermuda, in Bermuda, I think it's equally as important if the junior minister can provide us statistics to indicate the actual numbers of persons that have emigrated since the last census, which I think was 2016. And the reason for that is because government makes policy decisions based on that hardcore statistics. And if the government does not have those numbers to this point, does the government have plans to implement a means of obtaining those numbers? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones. Would any other senator care to ask questions on the statement, factors driving immigration in Bermuda? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I note that while issues like high cost of living and affordability are raised, and also satisfaction with life overseas, and high rising crime as factors for emigration. But I was wondering if we ever done an examination, and I did not see one in the 2025 Immigration Survey report, about the people who actually emigrate for reasons due to criminal activity. So, i.e., being involved in criminal activity themselves, leaving the jurisdiction due to fear of gang violence, being rehoused by the Bermuda government for witness protection. Where and when can we, or do we get those and collect those statistics?
Thank you, Senator Tannock.
Sorry, I should just add, I mean, just to clarify, I know we do have the numbers and statistics for people that we have emigrated for various reasons regarding perhaps witness protection and others. So it's really not those statistics, although those would be good to know as well. But it's really the concern about our young people, and even those who are not so young, who are leaving the island because of perhaps gang activity or criminal activity that makes it impossible for them to reside here any longer. Are we tracking them? What do we know about that segment of our population? Because unfortunately, you know, sometimes when we look at the news, especially in the UK, we see young Bermudian, and unfortunately, sometimes the news isn't good. So I'm wondering, and I'm curious, what are we doing to look at the people who are leaving the island because Bermuda is no longer habitable for them because of perhaps maybe even their involvement in crime or family members?
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Senator Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Senator Bell, for bringing this forward. And I think, you know, the government as a whole, I think we've recognized that immigration and our declining population is an issue. I would call it an issue of national security. And, you know, I note that you say that immigration, if excessive, well, I think it is excessive. I think the fact that we don't even know how many potential people have left. But I think the global research studies, I mean, clearly cite high cost of living, lack of affordability, you know, limited opportunities, lack of job growth as issues. So my question is, and, you know, this is nothing new in my mind, but what are the government's timelines in ensuring that that any research that's been conducted will be looked into and potentially used to stem our mass flow of emigration? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. I can provide some answers to questions that were tabled regarding the labor force survey. I can confirm, and this is the response to the question that was posed by Senator White. Department of Workforce Development served 683 persons, and the question was how successful in assisting those individuals in obtaining full-time jobs. While there were 683 persons seeking services from Workforce Development for 2024-2025 period, the department was able to refer 199 persons for jobs. For some context, the department is not an employment agency. However, it does provide some wraparound services for clients seeking employment. The department has set a target of placing 100 clients. That's their target for the year. It did fall short. We placed 55 persons. Additionally, the percentage of completed personal employment plans, known as PEPs, reached 64% rather than the 80% that was our target. This is due to clients disengaging from the process and having other social factors that delayed the PEP progress. And some of this was reported when we presented the budget on some of those targets. To the question posed by Senator Tannock regarding, and specifically regarding the survey that results that I presented about immigration and the reasons for did they immigrate due to either their criminal activity or criminal activity of their family or fear. Now, the survey was carefully worded to gain information on the various reasons, and if criminality or criminal activity was the reason, with some weight, it would have shown up in the results, and we didn't see that as some of the results. We saw that there was some concerns about crime and governance that was given for some of the reasons for leaving, but there wasn't anything beyond that in those results. And to the question posed by Senator Jones regarding updated stats on immigration, and he's correct. The last time we had statistics was reported from the census. The Department of Statistics is intended to ask more of those immigration-related questions in the upcoming census schedule for 2026.
Senator Tannock.
Yes, Madam President. Thank you very much, Senator Bell. I have the survey in front of me, and I have the questions that were asked for participants to rate the factors driving immigration. And I actually, all I see is gang culture, crime, and violence in Bermuda, and its potential impact on your family. So is that that's the question you're referring to?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. There was also, I believe there's two other questions. I'm just waiting for answers from my technical team, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Bell. We'll wait.
Madam President, while we wait, I can offer a partial answer to Senator Tannock's question with respect to, I think, people who might be in the witness protection programs. And certainly we discussed some of this during the budget debates. The problem is, you're quite right. I think that there are increasing numbers of people taking advantage of the witness protection programs, but there isn't a way to identify people who might have left for similar reasons, but they're not included in the program. But we do know that that witness care is quite that those resources are quite burdened at the moment. So it's an indication that there would be a trend in that direction.
Thank you, Madam AG.
Madam President, there was a question that was posed about what's government's timelines in ensuring research will be followed to stem the mass immigration. And as you're aware, the ministry is currently examining the data. There are a number of recommendations which cross a number of our ministries, and we can reference the recently held Cost of Living Summit, as well as the concerns related to affordable housing. So it will take some time to actually come up with a comprehensive strategy around some of the reports that we're getting. We do recognize, while the responses to that survey was quite stark, we recognize that this is definitely an opportunity for us to plan a way forward based on the results from that survey. Madam President, in response to Senator Jones' question, was when determining unemployment and employment rate, how many hours a week are counted? So hours are not part of the calculation of unemployment and the employment rate. The employment rate is calculated as the ratio of employed persons age 16 to 64 of the population of the same age. Let me read that again. The employment rate is calculated as a ratio of the employed persons age 16 to 64 to the population of the same age. The unemployment rate is the number of unemployed persons 16 and over as a percentage of the labor force 16 and over. So it's not based on hours of work. And there was a question regarding the number of youth that make up the unemployment rate. The total of 55 persons aged 16 to 25 were recorded as being unemployed. And Senator Tannock did pose a question regarding the unemployed workers who indicated that they're working for a family business. So they are counted as part of Bermuda's working population, even though they don't receive a salary.
Clarity, a point of clarification is that when I can say it, I don't know. But you mentioned unpaid workers. It was the sorry, you said unemployed workers working for family businesses. The phrase in the survey is actually unpaid workers who are working for family businesses.
Correct. Yes, I did misspeak. Yes, it is unpaid workers working in a family business, and those are counted as part of the island's working population.
Okay, so I do have a supplementary question in that case. If we look at the rising cost of living, if we look at expenses, if we look at our median income, so those people are factored into, I would assume, those calculations. But it will be difficult to say that our proportion of the working population are earning X or this if we have people that are unpaid that we are classing as employed. Wouldn't we class them as volunteers? I mean, you may not volunteer to work in a family business, but I struggle to see how we can use people who are unpaid but working in an employment survey that assesses salary, work hours. Do we not have a category that is not classified as employment, that it can be classified as, I don't know, free services or volunteerism, something that doesn't make it seem, because what it makes it seem like is that, you may work unpaid for a family business because you cannot find work anywhere else. So that doesn't mean that we've addressed the issue of unemployment. It just means that people have found opportunities in a family business, but they are not being reimbursed for them. So can we really say that we are decreasing unemployment if those people are not getting a wage? And I mean, it may be semantics, it may be a philosophical question, but I just struggle with classifying them with the workforce that are getting compensated.
Thank you, Senator Tannock.
So this category of persons who are unpaid workers in family business has been part of the results of the survey for a while, and it has been included as a part of tracking those persons who are working unpaid in a family business. And they are, I mean, if you look at the report, they also are, as reported, they are combined with those persons who are working for self. And so we recognize that some people who are working for self and some people who are working as an unpaid person in a family business may be receiving some other form of payment. Yeah, but this is so the statistics department use internationally accepted methodologies to capture information and statistics on labor force, and it's guidance taken from international standards. Okay, you're welcome. Madam President, I believe I've answered all of the questions that have been posed.
Thank you, Senator Lauren Bell, Junior Minister of Economy and Labor, for responding to the questions that have been presented this morning. With that said, now we will move on to the final statement that was given by Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs, Youth, Social Development and Seniors, and National Security. And that was titled The Cost of Living Summit. Would any senators care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And a number of my parliamentary colleagues attended the summit. My question is hopefully quite brief, but it is, did the Ministry of Home Affairs consider a different location as the optics of utilising the Hamilton Princess when we have various empty schools out there? I know that I drive past Harrington Sound Primary School. It seems to have been empty for the last 3 weeks. So, you know, any school halls or whatnot that could have been utilised for a cost of living summit rather than one of our major high-end hotels. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Senator Simmons.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I just want to say that the schools actually, all teachers finished on Monday, so that wasn't a place where we could have the summit. The Ministry of Home Affairs did look at other places, but Hamilton Princess was the best place to hold the summit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Hearing none, then thank you, senators, for your questions on the statements that have been presented this morning. We will now move on then with the order paper we have before us. Yes. So, senators, we now have arrived at the orders of the day, and the first item is the second reading of the Insurance Amendment Act 2025, and that is was in the name of Senator Caesar, spokesperson for finance, but we are looking to Madam AG, Minister of Justice, to present that bill.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled
Provisions of 24.
Provisions of 25. Do you have that?
Standing Order 20. Just move that the provisions
I move that the provisions of Standing Order 25
Be granted.
be granted.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. Carry on, Minister. Madam AG.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I now move that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2025 now be read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm pleased to present to the Senate the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2025, the bill. This bill amends the Insurance Amendment Act 1978, the Act, to confirm and expand the regulatory powers of the Bermuda Monetary Authority in respect of statutory financial statements by allowing the authority to make rules concerning prudential and technical standards and the form and content of information in such statements. The bill also validates rules previously made by the authority in relation to statutory financial statements. Madam President, Bermuda's insurance industry operates under a globally respected regulatory framework, which is critical to our international standing. The authority, as a financial services regulator, plays a vital role in maintaining the soundness and reputation of our jurisdiction. The bill is a necessary and prudent measure to ensure the legal integrity of that framework. Madam President, key highlights of the bill are as follows. Proposed amendments to Section 6A. Madam President, Section 6A sub 1 of the Act provides the authority with the ability to make rules prescribing prudential or technical standards in relation to key regulatory areas. However, statutory financial statements were not originally included in the list of matters to which such rules could apply. As a result, some rules made by the authority, including the Insurance Accounts Rules 2016 and rules for collateralized insurers, special purpose insurers, and Class 2GB insurers, are considered ultra vires to the extent that they prescribe technical standards for statutory financial statements. Madam President, to remedy this and remove any uncertainty, Clause 2 of the bill amends Section 6A, sub 1, to insert a new paragraph, FA, expressly allowing the authority to make rules in relation to statutory financial statements. This will regularize the legal basis of existing rules and confirm the authority's powers moving forward. The amendments to Section 6A that are being proposed by this amendment bill will also bring the Insurance Act in line with the Investment Business Act 2003 and the Digital Asset Business Act 2018. The second proposal, a proposed amendment to Section 15, which is the form and content of statements. Madam President, Clause 3 of the bill amends Section 15 of the Act by introducing two new subsections. Subsection 3A provides that the form and information contained in statutory financial statements may be prescribed by A, regulations made by the Minister of Finance for certain classes of insurers, for example, Class 1, 2, 3A, B, 1GB, and 1LT, or by rules made by the authority for other classes, for example, Class 3A, 3B, 4CDE, 2LT, 2GP insurers, special purpose insurers, and collateralized insurers. Subsection 3B provides that rules made under new subsection 3AB are not subject to parliamentary scrutiny under the Statutory Instruments Act 1977, aligning with treatment of other technical standards made by the authority. Madam President, this dual approach respects the historical vires established in Section 53 of the Act while recognizing the evolving role of the authority in supervising Bermuda's increasingly sophisticated insurance sector. Validating existing rules. Madam President, the authority sought to introduce new technical standards for statutory financial statements in 2022. Legal advice from the Attorney General's chambers confirmed that the authority lacked vires to make such rules under the current drafting of Section 6A and advised that an amendment to Section 6A sub 1 would provide the vires required. Without this amendment, Bermuda could risk undermining the legitimacy of its regulatory regime and jeopardize international recognition, such as Solvency II equivalency. Madam President, Clause 4 of the bill validates any rules made by the authority under Section 6A prior to the coming into force of this bill, which relate to statutory financial statements. This provision is necessary to preserve legal certainty and regulatory continuity, especially as these rules underpin Bermuda's status as a Solvency II equivalent jurisdiction. Madam President, this bill is therefore essential to uphold Bermuda's reputation as a premier financial center. Commencement. Madam President, the bill will come into operation upon enactment. Madam President, in closing, I would like to thank the technical teams within the authorities, the Attorney General's chambers, and the Ministry of Finance who have worked diligently to ensure the clarity, robustness, and legality of our insurance regulatory framework. And Madam President, I note in the chamber are Ms. Sierra Bell of the Ministry of Finance, and from our chambers, Elsha Wilson, who was actually very eagle-eyed in noting that statutory financial statements were somehow overlooked in the original version of the bill. And certainly as a practitioner, Madam President, I had looked at that, and I think sometimes we take the view that we note that it's missing, but we see that financial returns are there, and we just took them to say, oh, I guess we mean it to be the same. But I just want to commend the level of diligence that has come out of the technical teams from finance and the AG's chambers in this regard.
Thank you, Madam AG, Minister of Justice, and welcome to both of you. I'm glad she has introduced you to the chamber. And I would like to thank you for presenting this on behalf of Minister, not Minister, but Senator Caesar, who is the spokesperson for finance in this chamber. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Yes, Senator Jones, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank the Madam AG for bringing this legislation and presenting it to us. We, the opposition, support this bill. We recognize that the BMA and the ministry need to be able to acquire certain information primarily as it relates to statutory financial statements. And again, I would like to also join in with Madam AG in regards to giving our nod of appreciation for the keen eye of the technical team for spotting that. With the ever-changing and evolving industry, one would expect the regulator to be able to move at the speed of business without having to be under parliamentary scrutiny with every rule change that is required. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator John White, the Vice President in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to offer my support to Madam AG on this bill. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White, Vice President. With that said, would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, it's over to you. Mr. Wilkerson, AG.
Thank you, Madam President. I now move that Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion?
The second reading.
Second reading, sorry.
Just move the second reading.
Okay. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Insurance Amendment Act 2025 now be read a third time.
No, a second time.
A second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Now 26.
Now
Madam
you do
President?
26, sorry.
Yes. I move that Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Okay. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Insurance Amendment Act 2025 now be read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Insurance Amendment Act 2025 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Madam AG, for presenting this on behalf of Senator Caesar. And we now move on to the next item on our orders of the day, and that is the Trademarks Amendment Act 2025. And that's in the name of Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor. Senator Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the provision of Standing Order 25 be granted so that the Senate may now proceed with the second reading of the bill entitled Trademarks Amendment Act 2025.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Trademarks Amendment Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm pleased to present the Trademarks Amendment Act 2025 to this Honorable Senate. This bill seeks to amend the Trademarks Act 2023 to clarify several provisions in that legislation. This bill also includes a schedule of fee regulations that are intended to replace the Government Fees Trademarks Regulation 2023. Madam President, as honorable members are aware, the government is currently in the process of updating its legislation governing intellectual property. The Trademarks Act 2023 was the first piece of legislation that was approved by the Parliament as part of this effort, along with Government Fees Trademarks Regulations 2023. Several months later, in December 2023, the Trademarks Regulation 2023 was laid in the Honorable House. Madam President, a trademark is essentially a recognizable sign used to distinguish the goods or services of one party from those of another. Trademarks can be used by individuals and businesses, and they also can be used to indicate membership in a particular association. Trademarks can take the form of words including names, slogans, letters, symbols, colors, sounds, smells, packaging, or design. They are used to represent the goodwill that trademark owners have earned by marketing their products and services. For instance, whenever we see the word Nike or the image of that commonly referred to as the swoosh on clothes or shoes, we recognize the shoes or clothing as a Nike product. Nike is known for its use of the slogan, "Just Do It." Madam President, trademarks are intended to cause such automatic assumptions and can be quite a valuable part of a business by helping to establish brand recognition. They are assets that confer certain legal rights on their owner. Registration of a trademark in Bermuda gives the owner of that mark the right to use it and to prevent others from using it without his permission. Madam President, trademarks play a crucial role in a commercial marketplace, and business owners rely on them to compete. For this reason, it is important to provide a legal framework that is comprehensive, modern, and consistent with global practices. The Trademarks Act 2023 accomplishes this. However, the bill being debated today includes amendments that were deemed necessary to add further clarity and to ensure compliance with certain international standards. Madam President, this bill will insert a definition for the term transmission, as that term is used in the Trademarks Act 2023 to refer to transfers of registered trademarks. The intention is to clarify that such a transfer can occur in connection with a corporate merger or otherwise. Based on previous communications with customers and filings regarding transfers of registered trademarks, the Registry General's Department determined it would be helpful to include the proposed definition which specifically mentions corporate mergers along with other modes of transfers. Madam President, proposed changes to Section 34 of the Act will provide general authority for the registrar to record in the trademark register any transfers of ownership or other rights in a registered trademark, which is not already mentioned in that section. This would include transfers resulting from corporate mergers. Madam President, the bill will also make very minor changes to Schedule 3 of the Act 2023 to help ensure compliance with international guidelines as related to international trademarks and in consequence of the changing proposals to Section 34. Finally, Madam President, the Government Fees Trademarks Regulation 2025 are being introduced in a schedule to the bill and will replace the Government Fees Trademarks Regulation 2023. I note commencement of the new legislation has been delayed in large part to allow for additional time for the Registry General to prepare to administer the new framework. This included updating software to assist staff in meeting the responsibilities under the new act, a process that is funded and ongoing, and completing 2 rounds of training. The first round of training for staff was facilitated online over 6 months by representatives from the UK Intellectual Properties Office. The second round of training was attended in person by the staff and was facilitated through intergovernmental cooperation between the Bermuda government and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The delay also included a review of the fees set out in the 2023 fee regulation. Madam President, since those fee regulations have not yet been brought into force, the required amendments have been incorporated into the schedule of fees and the entire set of regulations reintroduced as a matter of efficiency. While the vast majority of fees are the same as those included in the 2023 schedule of fees, 8 fees have been added to the 2025 version. Fee numbers 7, 23, 67, and 99 relate to the new processes being undertaken by the Registrar General's Department under the new law. And fee numbers 36, 37, 42, and 43 relate to continuing processes and have been added to ensure the government collects appropriate fees for the processes to which they relate. The 2020 fee schedule also includes some minor corrections to some of the fee descriptions to ensure correct application of the fees. Madam President, this has been a substantial undertaking, and we are all looking forward to the commencement of the legislation. The Registrar General's Department and the Attorney General's Chambers have already completed the drafting process for all other regulations and documents required to support the legislation, including the forms needed to make applications and the required filings. These will be gazetted and published on the government's website in the coming weeks. Madam President, it was previously announced that the trademarks legislation will commence on July 1st. However, as amended in the House, the commencement date will change to August 1st. Madam President, I wish to extend my sincere thanks to the industry representatives for their cooperation and their invaluable input on the trademarks legislation. I would also like to thank the technical officers in the Registrar General's Department and the Attorney General's Chambers for their work on this initiative. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lauren Bell, Junior Minister for Economy and Labor. And before I open to the floor, I would just like to acknowledge in the chamber the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Aideen Rattery, the Permanent Secretary for Economy and Labor, as well as Ms. Levette Tannock from the Attorney General's Chambers. Welcome to you both, ladies. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Yes, Senator Marcus Jones, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We thank the Junior Minister for bringing this legislation to this chamber. We, as the opposition, do in fact support this amendment. We see that this amendment as a means to beef up our laws that can better protect intellectual property of an ever evolving industry. We note that the minor changes to the schedule, along with the 8 fees added to the original one. I will say the commencement date of this act, having been changed multiple times in another place, suggests that the government must not be so presumptive when declaring the commencement dates without taking into account deliberations in the Senate, who at the time of the tabling of this legislation in another place had not met to debate. We do support it. We see the value of it, and we thank you for this, for the government bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. My question is really relating to the transmission portion of this amendment, and it is with regard to just registration. So I would assume that what will happen is that regulations will be made that will address the registration transferring from one entity to another if it goes through the transmission by legal means. And also, has there been any examination given to trademarks that are jointly owned? If one party that is a joint owner of the trademark intends to transmit that trademark via a legal merger.
Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, we'll wait for a response from the junior minister.
Thank you, Madam President. In response to, first of all, I'd like to thank the opposition for their support for this legislation. In response to the question tabled by Senator Tannock, the regulations do provide for transmission from one entity to another, and the definition of transmission includes a transmission in relation to a sale or merger of a business. The regs are being finalized for laying in the house shortly. Does that answer your question?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Senator Bell. No, not really. I appreciate the definition of transmission. It was really with the transmission, the procedure, the setup for the procedure for if something's transmitted by sale, registering that to the new owner. That was the first one, because I did not see that covered in the act, but as you said, and as I mentioned, it may be in the regs. And then my second question was regarding trademarks that are jointly owned by entities. When one of the entities, when the entity perhaps is sold, and how does that has that been factored into joint ownership of a trademark? If joint ownership of a trademark that may be used by multiple entities when one entity is sold, and that trademark is transmitted to a third party, has that been taken into contemplation? So you and I we have businesses together, and we use the goddess Nike, not the Swish Nike, as our icon. And I decide to sell to Senator White my business, but you and I jointly use that icon. I transmit that to Senator White. Where does that leave you? I transmit my business and my use of that icon to Senator White. Where does that leave Senator Bow and her use of the icon? So I guess, does joint ownership transfer and so it'd be Senator Bell and Senator White jointly own the icon together. It's just that this has not been contemplated. I haven't seen it addressed in the legislation when there is more than one owner and it's been transmitted via a legal means, like the transmission through a merger.
So while I wait for the technical team to provide me with the question related to joint ownership of a trademark, I just want to clarify that the process of transmission is going to be covered under the regs, and we recognize that response. The joint ownership of a trademark is accommodated in the legislation. So when one owner moves on, the surviving owner retains the ownership, and that is covered under the legislation.
Yes, thank you. And are we including in that any reference to transmission, this new definition transmission and this new mode of transmission? Have we factored that into the section and provision relating to joint ownership? It's more my question.
And the response I've gotten from the technical team is yes, it is covered. You're welcome. Madam President, I believe that's the responses to all the questions tabled.
Yes, it is, and you now can move your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Trademarks Amendment Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect to this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Trademarks Amendment Act 2025 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled Trademarks Amendment Act 2025 do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator and senators, for your support of the bill. Senators, we will now move on to item number 3 on our order paper, and that is consideration of the draft order entitled Tourism Investment Clearwater Community Event Venue Order 2025, and that's in the name of Senator Misha G. Fubler, the Junior Minister of Tourism, Transport, Culture, and Sport. Senator Fubler, you can present your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the provisions of Standing Order 71, Section 2 be suspended. Madam President, Standing Order Section, yeah.
Suspended, yes. Yes.
Okay. Madam President, I move that the Senate do now take under consideration the Tourism Investment Clearwater Community Event Venue Order 2025 proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for tourism with the written agreement of the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 5 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you. And so here we have the briefing on that tourism investment order for the Clearwater Community Event Venue. And Madam President, the purpose in bringing this tourism investment Clearwater Community Event Venue Order 2025 before this chamber is to enable the grant of customs duty relief to the operators of the Clearwater Community Event Venue. The Minister of Tourism and Transport, Culture and Sport, in consultation with the Minister of Finance, deems this tourism project to be an attraction which is in the national economic interest of Bermuda. Madam President, I'm pleased to invite this chamber to take this order under consideration. Madam President, the application for a tourism investment order was submitted by Premier Tickets Limited, also known as PTICS, a company founded by Bermudian Michael Branco and incorporated in Bermuda on the 12th of June, 2024. Madam President, PTICS partnered with 2.0 Collective to establish a community event space at the Clearwater parking lot. The leadership team of PTIX includes Michael Branco, the Chief Information Officer, Judy Benavides, the Operations Manager, and Andrew Stoneham, the Customer Care Manager. The leadership team of 2.0 Collective includes Polina Komsolova, the CEO, Allison Murdoch-Smith, the Client and Creative Services Manager, and Nathan Swan, the Creative Lead. Madam President, PTIX has signed a 2-year lease with the Bermuda Land Development Company Limited for this parking lot site situated on Cooper's Island Road. PTIX plans to set up a permanent venue for use by community and event promoters, providing a cost-effective turnkey venue. They will install base infrastructure, including a 5,000 square foot tent, power infrastructure, and containerized bars and facilities. Madam President, PTIX has a flexi team of up to 52 Bermudian employees and has the capacity to staff every role for any size event, large or small. This team includes event managers, parking attendants, box office staff, and gate attendants. Local security companies will be hired to coordinate and manage event attendees. Madam President, on the 28th of March, 2024, the 5,000 square foot tent previously located at Pier 6 in Hamilton was set up at the main parking lot at Clearwater Beach, Cooper's Island Road. The open configuration accommodates large crowds, 800 people standing under and outside the tent. This tent can be dismantled within 30 minutes in the event of windstorms in excess of 45 miles per hour. Madam President, members of this chamber will note that Premier Tickets Limited is seeking full relief from customs duty for a period not exceeding 5 years from the operative date of the tourism investment order in respect of any equipment, goods, and supplies which are necessary for the operation of the attraction. Madam President, Michael Branco and his team at PTIX have every confidence, and I wholeheartedly concur, that this venue will become a vibrant component of the East End of Bermuda, something I'm sure some of our colleagues here in the Senate will appreciate greatly, enhancing our tourism offerings while simultaneously providing economies to the event organizers at Clearwater Beach. Madam President, I'm pleased to commend this order for the support of this chamber. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Misha Fabler, Junior Minister for Tourism. Would any senator care to speak on this bill, on this order? No one? Oh, Senator Cunningham.
I feel like someone should congratulate the government for looking out for the East End, especially given that we're East versus West right now. So let's go East End. And I think PTIX. I can't remember the date you said that they started, but they've obviously shown that they have a great deal of knowledge and experience in the event space in Bermuda. So I think anything that we can do to provide entertainment and opportunities for Bermudians and for our tourists is a great thing. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Senator Foley, I see your hand.
Well, being a St. David's Islander myself, I welcome any and all opportunities, and this surely is the beginning of something great for the Clearwater area, Cooper's Island, and the community of St. David's. So I definitely congratulate this venture and looking forward to participating in the events that are taking place there and encouraging my community to also to embrace this. So we welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Foley. Would any other senator care to speak on this order? Madam AG.
Thank you, Madam President. I was quietly waiting for Senator Foley to raise his hand initially, knowing that he is from the East and that tourism is his shadow portfolio. So you were a little slow off the mark, Senator Foley. But we certainly appreciate the support. I think this is an example of the tourism investment orders and, the concessions being granted to more than just hotel establishments. And the Progressive Labour Party government has heard that cry previously from other types of entrepreneurs or people involved in the tourism product, that why is it just hotels? And so we've seen another Bermudian with an event space. This chamber also passed the tourism, the order in relation to the pyrotechnics firm, the young man Kyle Swan, and to do it again in relation to Mr. Branco's business. He is obviously a well-developed business owner and operator, as Senator Cunningham alluded to, but to see the progress that is being made. And obviously with an event space like this, the exponential impact on jobs and services and caterers and so on in the space is what we're looking for. So it's, really spreading the opportunity economically. So I'm really keen to see this go off as well. And it'll force me to take a venture from Somerset down that way. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam AG and Government Leader in the Senate. With that said, Senator Fubler, you have full support.
Thank you, Madam President. And before I move the order, I'd just like to thank my colleagues for their support in this initiative. And as someone with firsthand experience in the logistical challenges of producing nightlife or even daytime events, things of the creative nature, I'm sure this is a welcome addition to the venue space. Kind of reducing the risk of producing an event by having a turnkey venue is something I'm sure many of the event promoters on the island will welcome. And with that, Madam President, I move that the said draft order be approved and that the following message be sent to His Excellency the Governor. May it please Your Excellency, the Senate, having had under consideration the draft order entitled the Tourism Investment Clearwater Community Event Venue Order 2025, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for tourism with the written agreement of the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 5 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017, has the honor to inform Your Excellency that the Senate has approved the said draft order.
Thank you, Senator Misha Fubler and all senators. And is there any objection to the order being sent, to the message being sent? No objection to the order will be sent. Thank you, Senator Misha Fubler and all senators for your support. That, senators, ends the orders of the day. And we now move on to item 14, motions. There are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Would any senator want to speak? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I want to give condolences to Clyde Darrell's family, to his wife, Dawn, his daughter, Katrina, her husband, Nathan, Clyde Jr., his wife, Lisa, his grandchildren, Josiah, Anaya, Araya, and Aiden. Mr. Darrell's a huge loss in the tourism industry, especially at Grotto Bay. I do want to say that when I ran in my by-election, Mr. Darrell was one of the first people that I met, and in C10, and he sat me down at his house and he told me, "Listen, Lindsay, this is what you need to do to win. C10 should be a PLP seat." And he lives on Bridal Hill. And Mr. Darrell made sure that he reached out to me, if not more than once a week, at least once a week. Mr. Darrell sent me a message of encouragement through both my by-election and the election. He was there to support me. He was the one that told me the challenges on Bridal Hill. He was the one that kept me on my toes. He made sure that I was doing everything I can to help correct the issue on Bridal Hill. And I made a commitment to him that I will collect the trash, not for a vote, but because this is the right thing to do. And, he used to send me messages like, "Are you sure you want to collect the trash?" Even up until 2 weeks prior to his passing, he questioned, should I be collecting the trash? And Mr. Darrell will continue to collect the trash until that is sorted. So condolences to his family. I also want to give condolences to Eunice Jones's family. When I ran in 2020, Miss Jones, She lived in C12 where I ran, and she was the first person to welcome me into her home. And she was supportive of me even when I transitioned and ran in C10. So to Miss Jones, this family, her husband Burton, her son Lavar, her daughter Deidre, and her husband Kingsley, her grandchildren DeMarco, Kingsley, Kaylani, and Isla. Thank you for the service that she did for Bermuda. Especially with her church, St. Paul's AME Church. She was a dedicated member and a dedicated PLP member. So condolences to both their families. I also want to give condolences to Kendall Harvey, his wife Tina Evans, his daughters Venue, Vishanti, Venue's husband Marcus, his stepdaughters Casey and Ariana Cairns. He was also a papa to Asa Malik. I know Mr. Harvey from when he taught at Warwick Secondary School with my sister. He was a dedicated teacher. He also taught my younger sister, and he was an advocate with the trade union, BUT. I want to thank him for his service to Bermuda. Condolences again to his family. On a positive note, Madam President, I want to congratulate all graduates, especially the students from the Barclay Institute, respect for them. I attended the Barclay Institute, but I am also the chairman of Cedar Bridge Academy, and I am happy to say that congratulations to the students as well. I want to shout out to Kamaya Matthew from Barclay Institute. She actually won the Minister's Achievement Award that was announced at their award ceremony. And I want to congratulate Shia Bean Wolf, who actually won the Minister's Achievement Award for Cedar Bridge. A student from each school every year is selected from the ministry as the students do the Achievement Award. I'm also the chairman of the government scholarships for the Ministry of Education. I will talk about that at a later date. I'll let the minister speak on that, but I just want to congratulate them. I want to also say, as the chairman of Cedar Bridge, I am also able to have the firsthand knowledge of the hard work and dedication that the students put in, the parents, the teachers, the counselors. I want to shout out to Cheryl Wolf and Donna Edwards, Deputy Principal Kanye Steed, and Principal Caesar. They led the Cedar Bridge team to make sure that these students had what they needed to graduate. The parents were there making sure that their children had what they needed to graduate. The last few months is a rough few months for everybody, making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. It always puts a smile on my face to see that students are graduating from Bermuda College before they graduate from high school. The dual enrollment students. It was nice to sit down with the students and parents to let them know, with Principal Caesar and Deputy Kanye Steed, that the students have made their mark and we're going to be graduates. To see the delightment on their face is the highlight of my year when it comes to what I do as a senator and as a chairman of Cedar Bridge. The best is always our people, the education that we pour into our students. I'm happy to say that each school had over $5 million in scholarships so far for our students. So while people might doubt what we are doing in the public education system, I'm here to say that it is evident year after year when these students graduate that we are preparing them for the future of Bermuda. I want to take 2 more seconds just to congratulate Deputy Carita Kanye Steed. I'm 44 years old. She has been teaching for 43 years. She is retiring and she's going to be a huge miss. I want to thank her for her dedication and hard work. And also Gina Davis from Cedar Bridge Academy as well. She is retiring as well. These are some of our great educators that have poured back into our students. We're figuring out a way to get Kanye Steed to come back to this school. She's going to be a huge miss. She does so much more. I mean, I was up to school yesterday. she lives there sometimes midnight, making sure that everything is there. So again, Deputy Kanye, thank you for your dedication and hard work to these students of Bermuda. And I'll end it there. And I know you only have 5 minutes. I try to speed through. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. With any other senator? I see two hands over there. Senator Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. I obviously would like to add my comments to those of my Senate colleague Simmons. And I will reach out to all our graduates from both the public and the private schools. I think they should definitely celebrate these milestones, along with obviously the school support system, parents, teachers, the rest of the community. I think we all cheer them on. And for those, looking at next steps, whether they're going overseas, whether they're going to Bermuda College, or whether they're going out into their field, I think I wish them the best of luck. Slight self-promotion for those going to Bermuda College who might want to further their insurance studies if they didn't get it in the signature program. I will be teaching an introduction to risk management this fall. I had a 100% pass rate in the last fall session, so great for you college students, dual enrollments, and career shifters. Moving on, it's obviously a big day for Mr. Michael Branco, so congratulations to him for winning the newly elected councillor of the Corporation of Hamilton election yesterday. I just want to wish him well. I think he was a great candidate, and hopefully we will work with him to ensure that Hamilton's growth and vibrancy continues. I would like to associate myself with the condolences, message of condolences from Senator Simmons for Mr. Darrell. A number of my constituents are related to him, and I have two of my mentees who are actually great nieces, I believe. And I would also like to offer, Madam President, my condolences to the family of Courtney Griffiths, who was a King's Counsel and revered lawyer known for his fierce advocacy and his unwavering commitment to justice. He had a very distinguished career, championed legal aid, and was widely respected for cross-examinations and his mentorship of young Black lawyers. So to his family, colleagues, and all who benefited from his profound dedication to justice, I extend my deepest condolences. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Senator Foley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I have two congratulations today, and it's with great joy actually to honor and extend a heartfelt birthday wish to a remarkable woman from the St. Davis community, Mrs. Bernice Smith, who will be celebrating her 100th birthday on July the 12th. Mrs. Smith is a shining example of grace, resilience, and unwavering faith. She is known across our island and more importantly in our community in St. Davis as a devoted Christian, a loving mother, a cherished nana, a beloved auntie, and a faithful friend, or simply as someone who has always showed up exactly how she was led to love. In reaching the extraordinary milestone, Mrs. Smith reminds us of the strength and spirit that have shaped our communities for generations. Her life is a testament to endurance, compassion, a quiet strength, and qualities that continue to inspire all who know her. So on behalf of the people of Bermuda, and especially the proud and close-knit community of St. David's, I wish Mrs. Bernice Smith a most joyful 100th birthday. May her day be filled with love, laughter, and the blessings she has so richly given to others over the past century. And those who would like to celebrate with her on July the 13th at the St. Luke's AME Church, please do so. We'll start services at 10:45 a.m. So happy birthday, Mrs. Smith, and we do celebrate you today. A second congratulations is that I would like to do, and that is to recognize and congratulate one of Bermuda's own, Michaela Pierman, Miss Michaela Pierman, for her outstanding participation and success at the 2025 Black Travel Expo, which was held this past weekend in Atlanta, Georgia. Miss Pierman served as the moderator for a compelling and forward-thinking panel discussion entitled Next Gen Storytellers, Shaping the Future of Travel Content Creation. Now, the panel brought together some of the most influential content creators, digital strategists, and innovators in the travel space, with a focus on how new voices, particularly those from the Black diaspora, are redefining how travel stories are told and who gets to tell them. Michaela led the discussion with confidence, professionalism, and insight, earning well-deserved praise from attendees and fellow panelists. Her presence on that stage not only elevated the conversation, but proudly represented the talent, leadership, and global perspective that Bermuda has to offer. As the founder and CEO of the Black Travel Expo, I can say firsthand that this platform is one that is both timely and necessary, bridging gaps, creating connections, and expanding opportunities for people of color across the globe and across the global travel industry. It is especially meaningful to see a Bermudian woman contributing at such a high level on this international stage. So I once again, I want to congratulate Ms. Pearman, Michaela Pearman, for her excellent work and for representing Bermuda with distinction. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Foley. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Misha Fubler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't quick enough to the draw there, and so I will have to associate myself with a couple congratulations, as well as starting off with associating myself with the condolences to Mr. Harvey. He's a constituent of Constituency 30, where I recently ran in the general election, and so I extend my heartfelt condolences to his family on his loss. I'm sure he will be dearly missed as a respected teacher and dedicated trade union advocate, as well as a taxi driver and an esteemed member of the Masonic fraternity. And so again, condolences to Kendall Harvey's family. And then moving to congratulations, I'd like to first congratulate Imagine Bermuda and the various groups involved in commemorating the 1959 theater boycott. Today marks the 66th anniversary of their success. Following 2 weeks of boycotting, they effectively ended segregation in Bermuda, or at least started the trend. And so I will actually be rushing off to the cathedral as the event has already started, and I am keen to attend and lend my support. I'd also like to extend congratulations to all of those involved in last night's celebration of our national heroes, primarily to the student leaders who gave the biographies on our various national heroes, as well as the performers for their engaging performances. I very much enjoyed it. And of course, to the Department of Culture for producing another successful event I look forward to next year. And finally, congratulations to those involved in putting on the Cost of Living Summit. I was in attendance in the afternoon, and I want to specifically highlight Mr. Aaron Critchlow of Bermuda is Love for his statements around encouraging Bermuda, and so this is to the listening public as well as my colleagues, to have a mind shift, to think differently about housing. It is imperative that we look at it as another public good, akin to schools, hospitals, and the roads, things that everyone should have a right to access. And in the interest of brevity for the event that I already mentioned, I'll leave it there, although I do intend at some point to also touch on Mr. Denton Williams' comments around the cooperative ownership of our utility, an idea that was also proposed at the Cost of Living Summit. Cooperative economics is something very dear to my heart, and so I will be planning to make a statement on that at a subsequent session prior to our summer break. And on that note, I yield my time. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fubler. Would Senator Jones, Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I'd like to associate myself with condolences that were extended to the family of the late Clyde Darrell, having joined him in the same profession that he excelled in, which is the hotel business. It was a pleasure for me to watch, although far younger than Mr. Darrell, to watch him climb to the ranks. And he was proof of someone that can start from the front line and make his way right up to the executive suite within that industry. He was truly one of our great ambassadors on this island. He also mentored many young people and encouraged and recruited those to come into the industry. So I surely want to associate with those condolences to that family. I also would like to give congrats to a dear friend of mine by the name of Delapina Maxwell Smith, who was actually in the paper yesterday, and she was highlighted for writing and publishing a book that she called The Loquat Chronicles, Lola and Larry's Tale, inspired by the beauty of St. David's Island. I was most intrigued and excited to see that she, being from the accounting background and profession, was able to step outside of her comfort zone and use her inspirational talents to write a book of this, which held a wealth of knowledge of the nature and beauty and the culture and the people of St. David's Island. So I would truly encourage everyone to have a look at this book that is now available on Amazon, and hopefully it can inspire more of us to jump out and take the plunge and write books as well. And it will also be remiss of me, finally, if I did not extend birthday wishes to a very fine lady that lives in the western end of the island. In fact, she lives right on the property that I live in, happens to be my mother, the matriarch of the Jones family, who celebrated her birthday this week. Mm-hmm. She is, I can tell you of a surety, she is listening to the radio right now. And she has been an inspiration not only to our family, and she's been a great, fine, godly Christian woman, but she's also been an inspiration to her neighborhood there in Cooks Hill Road and all throughout Somerset. Mother, I extend to you a hearty happy birthday. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jones.
Oh, Mary Lou Jones. Oh, my gracious.
What? Sorry, repeat it.
My mother her name is Mary Lou Jones.
Mary Lou Jones.
Yes.
All right.
Jeez, how could I forget?
Vice President John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Fubler referenced national heroes. I'd like to wish a very happy birthday to my good friend and a national hero, Sir John Swan, who turns 90 years old tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator John White. Yes, Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd like to associate myself with the congratulatory remarks given by Senator Fubler. I also attended the National Heroes event last night, and while I was blown away by the caliber of all the performances, there was one in particular, a singer, Hannah Bashara, who played the guitar and sung a rendition of Bermuda is Another World that blew my mind. I'd never appreciated the beauty of that song and in that song before. And I don't know if she has it recorded anywhere, but her rendition of Bermuda is Another World is just absolutely mind-blowing.
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Would any other senator? Yes, Minister AG, Mr. Minister Wilkerson.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me start by associating certainly with the condolences already, I believe, started by my colleague, Senator Simmons, in relation to the passing of Kendall Harvey. And certainly, Madam President was with me at the funeral services, at the celebration of life, which is more of it, which is, Kendall Harvey lived a life of celebration, and his loss will definitely be felt. Certainly, condolences to his family. I mean, they were personal friends of ours. I was at their wedding in Baltimore. We have traveled together to places like St. Kitts, and he will certainly be a loss, in recognizing the huge contributions that he's made to a teacher, to generations of students, but his consistent service as a member of the union was highlighted. And additionally, Senator Cunningham has mentioned the passing, and I join her in those comments of Courtney Griffiths, KC. Certainly when I started at law school as a mature student in 1999, I believe Courtney Griffiths had just become one of the first Black then QCs in the UK. But he made himself